Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The howling was the first thing I noticed when I approached the isolated compound. It wasn't like the wolves I'd heard on nature documentaries. This was something deeper, something that resonated in my chest cavity and made my breath catch. Grief has a sound that transcends species, and I recognized it immediately. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I trudged the final stretch toward the high wooden gates. The December wind bit through my coat, but I clutched the bundle in my arms closer, my body heat creating a small pocket of warmth for the tiny bodies nestled against me. Their faint whimpers were almost lost in the whistling wind that swept across the Montana wilderness. "You're almost home," I whispered, not sure if they could understand me, not even sure if I was saying it for them or for myself. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind as my numb fingers reached for the iron knocker on the massive gate. Sometimes the broken recognize each other in ways the whole never could. She'd given me her silver pendant the day she died, a crescent moon holding a small amber stone, and told me our family had always been bridges between worlds. I never understood what she meant until 3 days ago, when I found the abandoned pups in the forest near my cabin. The knocker felt impossibly heavy as I lifted it, or perhaps it was just my exhaustion. 3 days of sleepless nights, feeding the pups with an eyedropper, watching their little bodies struggle to survive. I'd driven 2 hours to the veterinarian who told me what I already suspected. These weren't ordinary wolf pups. His face had paled when he examined them. "Where did you find these?" he'd asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "In the forest behind my property." "These belong to the Black Creek Pack," he said, refusing to touch them further. "Take them back, now." I'd heard the rumors about the Black Creek territory, of course. Everyone in this remote corner of Montana had. Some said they were a cult, others whispered about government experiments. The truth was stranger, but I'd learned long ago that when people can't explain something, they create explanations that fit into their worldview. The sound of the knocker hitting wood echoed across the valley, and the howling abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how I must appear. A disheveled woman with pale blonde hair escaping from a messy bun, standing alone at their gates, uninvited and unwelcome. Minutes passed. The wind picked up, and snow began falling again, dusting my shoulders and hair. Just as I considered whether I should knock again, or simply leave the pups at the gate, I heard footsteps approaching from the other side. The massive wooden door creaked open just enough to reveal a man's face. Hard, angular, with eyes that reflected the winter light in an unusual way. His gaze flicked over me dismissively, then settled on the bundle in my arms. His nostrils flared slightly. "What do you want?" His voice was rough, as though he hadn't used it in days. "I found them," I said simply, pulling back the blanket to reveal the 3 small bodies huddled together. "In the forest. They were alone. I think they belong here." His expression transformed so quickly I almost took a step back. In one moment, he appeared human. The next, something else entirely flickered beneath the surface. He threw the door open wider. "Get inside," he ordered, grabbing my arm with unexpected strength and pulling me into the compound. "Now." The doors slammed shut behind me, and I found myself in a courtyard surrounded by several timber buildings arranged in a semicircle. People, at least they appeared to be people at first glance, emerged from doorways, their attention locking onto me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Nash," the man who'd let me in called out, his voice carrying an authority that silenced the murmurs rising around us. "Get Rowan. Tell him she has the pups." A tall woman with auburn hair disappeared into the largest building, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost predatory. The others formed a loose circle around me, their expressions ranging from suspicious to hostile. "How did you find them?" the man demanded, still gripping my arm. "Why did you bring them here?" Before I could answer, the crowd parted, and a man emerged from the main building. Even if the others hadn't fallen silent, I would have known instantly that he was their leader. Power seemed to radiate from him like heat from a fire. He was taller than the others, with broad shoulders and dark hair that fell past his jawline. But it was his eyes that held me, amber like the stone in my grandmother's pendant, with something ancient and wild behind them. When his gaze fell on the bundle in my arms, his composure cracked. For just a moment, raw grief flashed across his features, followed quickly by disbelief. "Impossible," he breathed, closing the distance between us in long strides. I should have been afraid. Everything about this place, these people, screamed danger. But as he approached, something else entirely flooded through me. A strange recognition, as though my body knew something my mind didn't. "They're alive," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Barely. They need their family." He stood before me now, close enough that I could feel the unnatural heat radiating from his body despite the freezing air. His gaze moved from the pups to my face, studying me with an intensity that made me feel transparent. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Before I could respond, one of the pups in my arms let out a tiny, high-pitched howl. The sound seemed to break something in the leader. Without warning, he fell to his knees in the snow before me, reaching for the bundle with trembling hands. I should have pulled away. These people weren't normal. I'd known that from the moment the door opened. But something compelled me to lower the bundle, to carefully transfer the pups into his waiting arms. As our hands brushed, a jolt of electricity shot up my arm, and for a split second, I felt a cascade of images and emotions that weren't my own. Moonlight on snow, the sensation of running faster than humanly possible, bone-deep grief, and an aching emptiness that threatened to consume everything. He felt it too. I could see it in the way his eyes widened, pupils dilating until the amber was just a thin ring around bottomless black. "Omega," he whispered, the word carrying a weight I didn't understand. Around us, the word rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. "Omega," they repeated, some with disbelief, others with what sounded almost like reverence. I took an instinctive step back, suddenly aware that I'd walked into something far beyond my understanding. The leader, Rowan they'd called him, rose to his feet, the pups now cradled against his chest. His expression had transformed into something unreadable. "You will stay," he said. It wasn't a request. "I need to get home," I replied, taking another step backward. "I just wanted to return them safely." "You don't understand what you've done by coming here," he said, his voice softening slightly. "What you are. It isn't safe for you to leave now." "I don't—" "The storm is getting worse," he interrupted, nodding toward the gates where the wind was now howling almost as loudly as the grief-stricken cries I'd heard upon arrival. "And you're exhausted. You've cared for our young at great personal cost. Allow us to offer you shelter for the night at least." Something in his tone had changed, becoming almost gentle. But his eyes remained vigilant, watching my every movement as though I might vanish if he blinked. One of the women stepped forward, the one called Nash. "I'll prepare a room in the main house," she said, but her eyes never left my face. There was a mixture of curiosity and suspicion in her expression, and something else I couldn't name. "What is your name?" Rowan asked. I hesitated, remembering my grandmother's warnings about names and power, but I was already here, already surrounded. "Elise," I said finally. "Elise Winters." A murmur rippled through the crowd again. Rowan's jaw tightened. "Winters," he repeated as though testing the word. "Of course you are." He turned to the gathered people. "Return to your duties. Elise Winters will be our guest tonight." They dispersed reluctantly, many casting glances back at me over their shoulders. Only Nash remained, her posture tense. "The East Room," Rowan told her. "And have Mira check on the pups immediately." Nash nodded, disappearing into the main house once more. Alone with Rowan, I became acutely aware of my vulnerability. My car was a mile back where the road had become impassable with snow. My phone had no service this deep in the mountains, and something told me that even if I could call for help, no one would dare come to Black Creek territory. "Why did you call me that?" I asked. "Omega. What does it mean?" Rowan studied me for a long moment, the pups squirming slightly in his arms as they sensed the tension. "It means," he said finally, "that nothing here will ever be the same again." He looked down at the tiny creatures he held. "For any of us." A gust of wind blew the main door open, sending a swirl of snowflakes around us. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of us standing in that strange tableau, the powerful leader holding the vulnerable pups, and me, suddenly aware that I stood at a threshold I could never uncross. "Come inside, Elise Winters," Rowan said, turning toward the main house. "There's much you need to learn before morning." As I followed him across the snow-covered courtyard, my grandmother's pendant seemed to grow warm against my skin, as though awakening after a long sleep. I touched it through my coat, remembering her final words to me. "When the time comes, trust what you feel, not what you see." I hadn't understood then. I wasn't sure I understood now. But as the door to the main house closed behind us, sealing me inside this strange new world, I knew with absolute certainty that my life would never be the same again. The interior of the main house was unexpectedly warm, both in temperature and aesthetic. I'd imagined something primitive, perhaps animal skins and rough-hewn furniture, but instead found myself in a spacious great room with soaring timber ceilings and modern furnishings. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, its flames casting flickering shadows across polished wooden floors. "This way," Rowan said, leading me past curious eyes that followed our progress through the house. The pups had settled against his chest, their tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath. I felt an unexpected twinge watching them, a mixture of relief and strange emptiness, as though my arms missed their weight already. We entered a room that appeared to be a medical facility of sorts, clean surfaces, cabinets of supplies, and an examination table in the center. A woman with silver-streaked dark hair looked up as we entered, her eyes widening at the sight of the bundle in Rowan's arms. "Impossible," she whispered, echoing Rowan's earlier reaction. "Check them," Rowan ordered, gently placing the pups on the table. "Elise has been caring for them for 3 days." The woman, Mira, I presumed, shot me a penetrating look before turning her attention to the pups. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, examining each tiny body. I watched from the doorway, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a deeply private moment. "How did you keep them alive?" Mira asked without looking up, her voice clinical but underscored with something like reluctant respect. "Eyedropper feedings every 2 hours. Warm compresses. Body heat." I hesitated. Instinct, mostly. At this, her hands stilled momentarily, and she exchanged a glance with Rowan that I couldn't interpret. "They're dehydrated but stable," she finally pronounced. "The smallest one concerns me. Her heartbeat is irregular." Her fingers brushed over the runt of the litter, whose white-tipped ears twitched at her touch. "They need their mother's milk, but—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The grief that permeated this place told me everything I needed to know about the pup's mother. "We have the formula from last time," Rowan said, his voice tight. "Last time we had Lena," Mira replied, a sharpness in her tone that made Rowan's jaw clench. "And it wasn't enough." The name hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken history. I shifted uncomfortably, feeling like I was witnessing something I shouldn't. "Then what do you suggest?" Rowan asked, an undercurrent of frustration in his voice. Mira's gaze shifted to me, assessing. "Her," she said simply. Rowan followed her gaze, his amber eyes narrowing slightly. "Explain." "She's kept them alive this long, and she's—" Mira hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "What she is. It might be enough." "We don't know what she is," Rowan countered, speaking about me as though I wasn't present. "Not for certain. I'm standing right here," I said, irritation finally overcoming my caution, "and I have no idea what either of you are talking about." Both of them turned to me, expressions so similar that in another context I might have laughed. Instead, I crossed my arms over my chest, holding their gaze despite the unease crawling up my spine. "What did you feel?" Mira asked abruptly. "When you found the pups, what did you feel?" The question caught me off guard. I'd expected demands about how I'd found them, or accusations about trespassing on their territory. Not this. I paused, searching for words to describe the overwhelming compulsion that had driven me deeper into the forest that day, following sounds I shouldn't have been able to hear, like I was being called, like they were calling me specifically. Mira nodded as though I'd confirmed something. "And when you touched them? Calm," I said, remembering the strange peace that had settled over me when I'd gathered the whimpering pups into my coat, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Rowan made a sound low in his throat, not quite human. His hands clenched at his sides, and for a moment, something shifted beneath his skin, too quick for me to process. "It doesn't make sense," he said to Mira. "A human Omega. It's never happened before. Many things are happening that have never happened before," Mira replied cryptically. She turned back to the pups. "Whatever she is, these pups respond to her, and right now, that's what matters." Before anyone could say more, Nash appeared in the doorway behind me. "The room is ready," she announced, then added more hesitantly, "and the others are asking questions." "They'll wait," Rowan said flatly. He turned to me. "You need rest. Tomorrow we'll talk." "I need answers now," I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. "You've called me Omega twice, talked about me like I'm some kind of... I don't know what. I deserve to know what's happening." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Yes," he agreed after a moment. "You do. But not here." He glanced at the pups. "Mira, prepare the formula. I'll return shortly." He gestured for me to follow him out of the room. As I turned to leave, I felt a sudden tug, like an invisible thread connecting me to the tiny bodies on the examination table. I hesitated, looking back at them. "They'll be here when you return," Mira said, her voice gentler than before. "They've imprinted on you. That bond doesn't break easily." Imprinted. The word sent a shiver through me. Whatever I'd stumbled into, whatever these people were, I was already entangled in ways I didn't understand. I followed Rowan through the house to a small study lined with bookshelves. He closed the door behind us, then moved to pour 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Drink," he said, offering me one. "It helps." "With what?" I asked, accepting the glass cautiously. "With what you're about to learn." He took a seat in a leather chair, indicating I should take the one opposite him. "What do you know about wolves, Elise Winters?" The question seemed odd after everything that had happened. The basics. They're pack animals, apex predators, endangered in many regions. "And what do you know about werewolves?" he asked, his gaze intent on my face. I nearly laughed, but something in his expression stopped me. "Folklore, myths, horror movie monsters." He nodded, taking a long sip from his glass. "And if I told you that the truth lies somewhere between those things? That we are neither the wolves of the wild, nor the monsters of human imagination, but something that has evolved alongside humanity for thousands of years?" My throat went dry. "I would say that's impossible. 3 days ago, you found wolf pups that should have died without their mother. Yet something called you to them. Something gave you the knowledge to keep them alive. Is that also impossible?" I stared into my untouched drink, memories flashing through my mind. The strange feelings I'd had my entire life. The way animals always gravitated to me. My grandmother's cryptic teachings about our family being different. "What are you saying?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "The Black Creek Pack is not human, Elise. Not entirely. We carry the bloodline of both wolf and human, a legacy passed down for generations, what humans would call werewolves, though that term grossly simplifies what we are." He said it so matter-of-factly, as though he were telling me it might rain tomorrow. I should have laughed, should have set down my drink and walked out. But the pups in the other room, the grief that permeated this place, the strange electricity I'd felt when our hands touched, all of it crystallized into a truth I couldn't deny. "And what am I?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Rowan leaned forward, his amber eyes reflecting the firelight. In wolf packs, there is a hierarchy. Alphas lead, betas enforce, but omegas— He paused, searching for words. Omegas are rare, special. They are the heart of the pack. Empaths who feel the emotions of others, who heal and nurture and bring balance. But I'm human, I protested. You said it yourself. A human omega has never existed. Your bloodline isn't as human as you believe. His gaze dropped to the pendant visible at my throat. The Winters family has always lived on the boundaries. Not quite human, not quite like us. Sensitives, some call them. Those who can perceive the supernatural world without being fully part of it. My grandmother's face flashed in my mind. Her strange lessons about the moon, the herbs she gathered only at certain times. The way she always seemed to know when animals were in pain. This can't be real, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. Some part of me had always known I was different. Had always felt like I was waiting for something to make sense of that difference. Yet here you are, Rowan said softly, called to our pups in our darkest hour. His expression darkened, after hunters killed their mother and we believed them lost forever. The pain in his voice was raw, personal. The pup's mother, I began carefully. Was she your— My sister, he replied, grief flickering across his features. Lena. She was carrying the next generation of our pack. The first births in 5 years. His hand tightened around his glass. She went hunting alone, despite our warnings. Humans have been encroaching more and more on our territory. When she didn't return, we tracked her scent to where she'd been shot. But the pups were gone. I'm sorry, I whispered, understanding now the magnitude of what their loss had meant. Not just family, but the future of their kind. We searched for days, he continued, until the storm came and washed away all sense. We believed them taken by the hunters, or lost to the elements. His eyes locked with mine, until you appeared at our gates, carrying them home. The weight of his words settled over me. By pure chance, or perhaps something more, I'd stumbled into a centuries-old secret world, one that now seemed reluctant to let me leave. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Isn't your existence supposed to be secret? A hint of a smile touched his lips, the first I'd seen. The moment you walked through our gates carrying our pups, secrecy became irrelevant. You're already part of this, Elise Winters. The only question is what happens next. And what does happen next? That depends on you. He set his glass aside, leaning forward. The pups have formed a bond with you. In our world, such bonds are sacred. They need you, at least until they're stronger. And after that? I asked. Something complex crossed his features, reluctance perhaps, or uncertainty. That will be your choice. But the way he said it made me wonder if it would truly be my decision to make. There was a pull between us that defied explanation, something primal and unsettling that made my heart race whenever his eyes met mine. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted somewhere in the house. Raised voices, hurried footsteps. Rowan was on his feet instantly, moving with inhuman speed to the door. It burst open before he reached it, Nash standing there with panic etched across her face. Hunters, she said breathlessly. At the North Ridge. Theo's been shot. Rowan's entire demeanor changed, his body tensing like a coiled spring. Alert the others. Full lockdown. His gaze swung to me, suddenly sharp with suspicion. How convenient that they appear the same night you arrive. I had nothing to do with this, I protested, rising to my feet. Perhaps not intentionally, he growled, and for a split second his features seemed to shift, becoming sharper, more lupine. But coincidences are rare in our world. Nash glanced between us, clearly torn between urgency and curiosity about our conversation. Mira says to bring her, she added, nodding toward me. The runt's failing. She's tried everything. The suspicion in Rowan's expression warred with concern. Finally, he made a sharp gesture. Watch her. If she tries to leave or contact anyone, restrain her. I want to help, I said, thinking of the struggling pup. Please. Something in my voice must have reached him, because his expression softened slightly. Then prove your words with actions, Omega. The title fell from his lips like a challenge. Save what's left of my family. As Nash led me back toward the medical room, I could hear the pack mobilizing, doors slamming, voices calling out positions and strategies. The calm house had transformed into a fortress preparing for siege, all because of hunters who had already taken too much from them. I thought of the pups, so vulnerable and unaware of the danger approaching, of the smallest one fighting for its life, of the strange bond I'd felt the moment I found them huddled together in the snow. Trust what you feel, not what you see, my grandmother had said. Right now I felt afraid, but beneath that fear was something stronger, a determination that surprised me with its intensity. These people might not be human, but the grief in Rowan's eyes when he spoke of his sister, the protective fury now radiating from every member of the pack, those emotions were profoundly human. And the tiny lives waiting in the medical room needed me, whether I understood the reason or not. Whatever happened next, whatever I truly was, I couldn't turn away from that need, not even if it meant I could never return to the life I'd known before. The medical room was a flurry of activity when Nash led me inside. Mira hovered over the smallest pup, her movements becoming increasingly desperate as the tiny creature's breathing grew more labored. The other two pups whimpered restlessly, sensing their siblings' distress. Her heart rate's dropping, Mira said without looking up. The formula isn't enough. I moved to the examination table, ignoring Nash's warning glance. The runt was barely moving now, her small body trembling with each shallow breath. What can I do? I asked, fighting back the unexpected surge of emotion tightening my throat. Mira finally looked up at me, her expression a mixture of resignation and hope. Hold her. If you truly are what Rowan believes, your presence alone might strengthen her. I reached for the struggling pup, cradling her against my chest. She felt impossibly small and fragile, her heart beat a faint flutter against my palm. On instinct, I placed my hand over my grandmother's pendant, then pressed the warm silver against the pup's body. Fight, I whispered, closing my eyes. Please fight. Something strange happened then. A warmth spreading from the pendant through my fingers and into the tiny body I held. The room seemed to fade away, and in my mind's eye I saw threads of light connecting me to each pup, golden filaments pulsing with life energy. The thread leading to the runt was dimming, fading to a dull amber. Without understanding how I knew what to do, I imagined my own energy flowing down that connection, reinforcing it, brightening it. I felt a pull inside me, as if something was being drawn from my very core. The pup in my arms took a sudden, deeper breath, then another. Her heart rate's stabilizing, Mira said, wonder creeping into her clinical voice. What did you do? I opened my eyes, feeling strangely lightheaded. I don't know. I just wanted her to live. Mira exchanged a meaningful glance with Nash. Omega energy, she said quietly. Just like the old stories, the pup squirmed against me, her tiny mouth opening in a yawn that revealed pink gums and a miniature tongue. Relief washed through me so intensely that my knees nearly buckled. You should sit, Nash said, her earlier suspicion softening slightly as she guided me to a nearby chair. Giving energy takes a toll, especially the first time. I sank gratefully into the seat, still cradling the pup. Will she be okay now? Thanks to you, she has a fighting chance, Mira replied, checking the other two pups. All of them do. A commotion from the front of the house interrupted our moment of reprieve. Raised voices, heavy footsteps. Nash tensed, her hand moving instinctively to her hip where I noticed, with a jolt of alarm, she carried a knife. The door burst open, and two men I hadn't seen before entered, supporting a third between them. Blood soaked through his shirt, his face ashen with pain. Mira immediately cleared a second examination table. Lay him down, she ordered. What happened? Ambush at the North Ridge, one of the men replied grimly. They were waiting for us. The wounded man, Theo, I presumed, groaned as they settled him on the table. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused with pain, then widened when they landed on me. Who is she? He gasped, trying to push himself up despite his injury. Why is an outsider here during an attack? She brought the pups home, Nash explained quickly, helping Mira cut away Theo's bloodied shirt. Rowan's ordered her kept inside. Theo's gaze dropped to the bundle in my arms, disbelief momentarily overshadowing his pain. Impossible. You've lost a lot of blood, Mira said, examining the wound in his shoulder. The bullet went clean through, but she stopped abruptly, her expression changing. There's something wrong. The wound should be starting to heal already. A look of understanding passed between them. Silver, Theo said hoarsely. The room went silent. Even I knew enough folklore to understand the significance. Silver, the werewolf's bane. Apparently, some myths held kernels of truth. We need to neutralize it, Mira said, moving quickly to a cabinet. Nash, get Rowan. These hunters know exactly what they're hunting. As Nash hurried from the room, Theo's eyes found mine again, harder now despite his pain. Convenient timing, he managed through gritted teeth. I had nothing to do with this, I said firmly, tired of the accusation. I've been living alone in my cabin for 2 years. I found the pups by chance. There are no chances in our world, he replied, wincing as Mira returned with a jar of dark paste. Only fate and enemies. Before I could respond, Rowan appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. Blood, not his own, spattered his shirt, and his eyes had taken on an unnatural glow. Report, he demanded, moving to Theo's side. 6 hunters that we've counted, Theo said, his breathing labored. Armed with silver ammunition and UV lights. They're not amateurs, Rowan. They knew where our patrol routes would be. Rowan's jaw tightened. Casualties? Just Theo so far, Mira answered, applying the paste to his wound. But they have the high ground on the North Ridge. If they push further onto our territory... They won't, Rowan cut her off. I've sent Kyle and Vera to flank them from the east. Darius is taking the others to secure the southern boundary. His gaze settled on me, calculating. The question is how they knew to come tonight. I told you, I had nothing to do with this, I said, frustration finally overcoming caution. I live alone. I speak to almost no one. Why would I save your pups only to lead hunters to your door? Something in my words seemed to reach him. His expression softened marginally. The pup? He asked, nodding toward the bundle in my arms. Stabilized, Mira replied. Thanks to her. Rowan's gaze lingered on the tiny creature nestled against me, something vulnerable flickering across his features before the mask of leadership returned. The timing is still suspicious, he said, though with less conviction. A distant crack echoed through the night. A gunshot, then another. Rowan tensed, his entire body alert. A howl rose from somewhere in the forest. Not a grieving sound this time, but a warning. They're moving closer, he said, already turning toward the door. Nash, stay with them. No one enters this room without my direct order. What about her? Nash asked, nodding toward me. Rowan paused, his eyes meeting mine. In that moment, something unspoken passed between us, an understanding beyond words. Protect them, he said simply. Then he was gone, moving with preternatural speed. Silence fell over the room, broken only by Theo's labored breathing and the occasional whimper from the pups. I shifted the runt in my arms, checking that she was still breathing steadily, then carefully placed her back with her siblings. They immediately huddled together, drawing comfort from each other's presence. Why would hunters come here? I asked quietly. What do they want? Nash, who had taken up position by the door, glanced at me. What hunters always want: trophies, proof. Some hunt us for sport, others because they believe we're abominations. And some, Mira added grimly, finishing her treatment of Theo's wound, hunt us for specific parts they believe have magical properties. Blood, claws, organs. I felt sick. That's barbaric. That's humanity, Theo muttered, his color improving slightly as the paste did its work. No offense. Half humanity, in my case, apparently, I replied, thinking of what Rowan had told me about my ancestry. This earned me a surprised look from all 3 of them. He told you? Nash asked, incredulous. Some, I admitted. Enough to understand that I'm somehow connected to all this, even if I don't fully understand how. Mira's expression turned thoughtful. The Winter's bloodline has always been close to our kind. Healers, mediators, but never before has one of them manifested Omega traits. What exactly does that mean? I asked. Being an Omega? In the simplest terms, you balance the pack, she explained, checking Theo's bandages. Alphas like Rowan project power outward. Omegas project calm inward. They sense emotions, ease suffering, facilitate healing. Like what you did for the pup, Nash added, her earlier hostility noticeably diminished. Another volley of gunshots rang out, closer this time. Nash tensed, hand going to her knife. If they breach the compound, she began. They won't, Theo interrupted, pushing himself up despite Mira's protests. Not while Rowan stands. The faith in his voice was absolute. Despite my fear, I found it oddly reassuring. The loyalty this pack showed to their leader, the certainty that he would protect them at any cost. A sudden silence fell outside, more unnerving than the gunshots had been. We all froze, listening intently. Then came a sound that made my blood run cold, a pained howl, abruptly cut short. "Rowan," Nash whispered, her face draining of color. Without thinking, I stood. "We have to help him." "Your concern is touching," Theo said, though his voice held less suspicion now. "But what exactly do you think you can do against armed hunters?" I didn't know. I only knew that the thought of Rowan falling to these hunters filled me with a dread I couldn't explain. We'd barely met, were practically strangers, and yet... Another howl rose from the forest, different this time, more desperate, a call for reinforcements. Nash made a decision. "Stay here," she ordered, moving toward the door. "Lock it behind me." "Wait," Mira called. "We need you here if they breach the house." "If Rowan falls, the house won't matter," Nash replied grimly. "Theo can fight if necessary." She disappeared through the door before anyone could argue further. I moved to secure it behind her, my hands shaking slightly. Through the window, I could see shadows moving at the edge of the forest. Human figures carrying rifles, advancing on the compound. "They're coming," I said quietly. Theo struggled to his feet, Mira supporting him. "Get the pup somewhere safe," he ordered. "There's a hidden room in the cellar. Mira knows the way." "What about you?" I asked. His smile was more wolf than human. "I'll buy you time." "You're injured," I protested. "The silver is neutralized enough," he finished. "I can still fight." He moved to a cabinet, retrieving a handgun. "Go, now." Mira gathered the pups into a small basket, then gestured for me to follow her through a door at the back of the room. I hesitated, looking back at Theo standing guard, his face pale but determined. "Thank you," I said, "for protecting them, for protecting me." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Thank me by keeping them safe, Omega. They're our future." As I turned to follow Mira, the main door to the house burst open. Shouts echoed through the corridors. The hunters had breached the compound. And somewhere in the darkness beyond, Rowan was injured or worse, the alpha who had looked at me with suspicion and wonder, whose touch had sent electricity through my veins, whose family I now carried to safety. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I would do whatever it took to protect these pups, and to help the pack that had already begun to feel impossibly like my own. The cellar stairs creaked beneath our feet as Mira led me downward, the basket of pups clutched tightly in my arms. Above us, the sounds of struggle intensified, shouts, crashes, a single gunshot that made us both freeze momentarily on the steps. "Hurry," Mira whispered, her face taut with fear. We reached the bottom of the stairs, entering a large storage area lined with shelves of preserved food and supplies. Mira moved quickly to the far wall, pressing against what appeared to be solid stone. To my amazement, a section swung inward, revealing a small hidden room. "Inside," she urged. Quickly, I ducked into the space, which was barely large enough for 2 people. A single battery-powered lantern sat on a small table, casting weak light across the windowless walls. Mira followed, pulling the hidden door closed behind us. The sounds from above became muffled, but not silent. We could still hear the fighting, now punctuated by inhuman growls. "The pack is shifting," Mira explained, seeing my expression. "When threatened, our wolf forms offer advantages." The pups squirmed in their basket, sensing the tension. The smallest one, the runt I'd helped save, whimpered softly. I reached in to stroke her tiny head, and she immediately calmed under my touch. "How long has your pack been here?" I asked. Partly out of curiosity, partly to distract us both from the violence unfolding above. "Generations," Mira replied, checking the pups one by one. "Rowan's great-grandfather established this territory in the 1920s, after hunters drove us from our previous lands in Canada." "So it never ends," I said softly. "This cycle of persecution." Mira's eyes met mine, centuries of weariness reflected in them. Some humans fear what they don't understand. Others simply enjoy the power of taking life. She gently rearranged the pups as they nursed from bottles she'd prepared. "But there have always been humans who protected us too, who saw us as kindred spirits rather than monsters, like my ancestors?" I asked. She nodded. "The Winters family has shared these mountains with us for almost as long as we've been here. Your grandmother was a trusted friend to our pack." This revelation sent a jolt through me. My grandmother knew about all of this? She was our healer when medical supplies couldn't reach us during bad winters. A midwife when our women gave birth. Mira's expression softened with memory. She delivered Rowan himself. During the worst blizzard in 50 years, I stared at her, struggling to reconcile this new information with the grandmother I'd known, the eccentric woman who taught me about herbs and moon phases, who spoke to animals as if they understood her. All this time, her cryptic lessons had been preparing me for something I couldn't have imagined. A particularly loud crash from above made us both jump. The pups began whimpering in earnest, sensing danger. I gathered them close, trying to project calm despite my own fear. "If they find us down here," I began. "They won't," Mira interrupted firmly. "The pack would die before revealing this place." The certainty in her voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it filled me with dread at what might be happening above us. "And Rowan?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "The howl we heard." Mira studied me curiously. "You're concerned for him, despite his suspicion of you." "I'm concerned for all of you," I replied, though I couldn't deny the particular worry that twisted in my chest when I thought of Rowan injured or worse. "This is wrong. You've done nothing to deserve this." "Such is the burden of being different in this world," Mira said softly. "Humans have always feared what walks the boundaries between worlds." "But I'm human," I protested weakly, though even as I said it, I felt the truth slipping away from me. The way I'd healed the pup, the strange connection I felt to this place, to these people, to Rowan. None of it felt human in any way I'd understood before. "Are you?" Mira asked gently. "Or are you finally discovering what you've always been?" Before I could respond, a sound above us made us both freeze. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving across the cellar floor. Hunters. They'd made it past Theo and whatever defenses the pack had mounted. Mira extinguished our small light, plunging us into darkness. I curled protectively around the basket of pups, my heart hammering so loudly I feared it might give us away. The footsteps stopped directly above our hiding spot. "There's nothing down here," a gruff voice said. "Just storage. Check everything," another voice responded. The alpha bitch said there were pups. They must be hiding them somewhere. "Alpha bitch?" My mind raced, trying to make sense of their words. "She could have been lying," the first voice said. "Trying to buy time." "No, she was telling the truth. You saw how she reacted when Reynolds threatened to do a vivisection on them. That's when the alpha male went berserk. Bile rose in my throat. These weren't just hunters. They were torturers, researchers of the cruelest kind." "Still can't believe she was human," the second voice mused. "Working with these monsters. Stockholm Syndrome, probably," the first replied dismissively. "Or maybe she's like that traitor doctor in the 80s who helped them hide for years. Either way, she'll tell us everything once Reynolds is done with her." A cold realization washed over me. They weren't talking about an alpha bitch wolf. They were talking about Nash. They'd captured her, were using her to find the pups, and Rowan had gone berserk trying to protect them. The footsteps resumed, moving away from our hiding spot toward another area of the cellar. Mira's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing tight. "We need to move," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "There's a tunnel that leads to the forest. If we can reach it." The hidden door suddenly swung open, flooding our small space with light. I instinctively curled tighter around the pups, expecting to see hunters with raised guns. Instead, a bloodied Theo stood in the opening, his expression grim. "We have to go," he said without preamble. "Now. The south tunnel." "Theo, what?" Mira began. "They have Nash and Kale," he interrupted. "Rowan's holding them off at the north entrance, but there are too many. They came prepared. Silver nets, wolf's bane darts." His gaze settled on the pups. "They know about the little ones. It's what they came for." I felt sick. "What do they want with them?" Theo's expression darkened further. "Pure-blood wolf-born pups are rare. Their organs fetch high prices on certain black markets, something about youth essence and regenerative properties." He spat the words like poison. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. These were babies, helpless, innocent. The thought of them being slaughtered for some twisted notion of medicine or magic was unbearable. "I won't let that happen," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Theo gave me an appraising look, as though seeing me clearly for the first time. "Then follow me. The south tunnel emerges 2 miles into the forest. If we can get there, we might have a chance." "What about the others?" Mira asked, gathering emergency supplies into a small bag. "Rowan? Nash?" Theo's face tightened with pain, both physical and emotional. "Rowan ordered me to get you and the pups out, whatever the cost." The implication hung heavy between us. He was prepared to sacrifice himself, and the others were doing the same. "No," I said firmly, rising to my feet with the pups clutched to my chest. "There has to be another way. We can't just leave them. This isn't a negotiation," Theo growled, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Rowan gave an order. And I'm not part of your pack to follow it blindly," I retorted. "These hunters want the pups. If we take them far enough away, maybe the hunters will follow us and leave the others. Or maybe they'll just kill everyone here and then hunt us down," Theo countered. "Stop," Mira interjected, her voice low but commanding. "Both of you. Arguing wastes time we don't have." She turned to me. "Elise, what are you suggesting?" "Because Theo's right. Our priority has to be the pups." I took a deep breath, an idea forming. "You said I'm an Omega, that I can sense emotions, Project Calm. What if I could use that, not just on the pups, but on the hunters?" Theo scoffed. "You've only just discovered what you are. You can barely keep one runt pup alive, and now you want to mind control armed hunters? Not control," I corrected, the plan clarifying as I spoke. "Distract, confuse." My grandmother taught me techniques for years. Meditation, energy work. I thought it was her eccentricity, but what if it was preparation? I touched the pendant at my throat. This has power. I felt it when I healed the pup. Maybe I can use it. Mira and Theo exchanged looks, skepticism warring with desperate hope. "It's too dangerous," Mira said finally. "You don't know your capabilities yet. You could drain yourself completely. And if I do nothing, people who protected me, protected these pups, will die," I replied. "I can't live with that." The sounds of fighting grew louder above us. We were running out of time. "What exactly do you propose?" Theo asked, relenting slightly. "Get me close enough to the main fight. I'll do what I can to confuse the hunters, make them disoriented, emotional, anything to give your pack an advantage. Meanwhile, Mira takes the pups through the tunnel to safety." "Absolutely not," Theo said immediately. "Rowan would tear me apart if I let you near those hunters. And what will he do if his entire pack is slaughtered?" I challenged. "You said it yourself. They came prepared. Your pack needs every advantage." A tremendous crash from above ended our debate. Dust rained down from the ceiling. "They're breaking through the floor," Mira whispered in horror. Theo made a split-second decision. "Give the pups to Mira. Now!" I carefully transferred the basket, my heart aching as the tiny creatures whimpered at the separation. The runt looked up at me with eyes that hadn't even fully opened yet. and I felt our connection stretch but hold. "I'll come find you," I promised softly. Mira took the basket, then gripped my arm with surprising strength. "The pendant," she said urgently. "It amplifies what's already inside you. Focus through it. Let it guide you." Another crash, closer this time. "Go!" Theo urged, pushing Mira toward the back of the hidden room, where a small door I hadn't noticed before led deeper underground. "The south tunnel. Don't stop until you reach the old hunting cabin." As Mira disappeared with the precious cargo, Theo turned to me, eyes glowing with an inner light that wasn't entirely human. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "If I tell you to run, you run. Understand?" I nodded, clutching my pendant and trying to center myself the way my grandmother had taught me. Focus inward, then project outward. Feel the connections between all living things. Trust what you feel, not what you see. Theo led me through the cellar toward a different staircase than the one we'd descended. I could hear the sounds of fighting more clearly now, human shouts mixed with growls and snarls that raised the hair on my arms. "Ready?" Theo asked as we reached the top of the stairs. I wasn't. Not remotely. But I thought of Rowan fighting to protect his family, of Nash captured and being used to betray her own kind, of the tiny pups who deserved a chance at life. "Ready," I lied and followed Theo into chaos. The scene that greeted us was nightmarish. The great room I'd admired earlier was now a battlefield. Furniture lay shattered, windows broken. Blood, both human and other, stained the polished wooden floors. Men in tactical gear wielded weapons tipped with silver, facing off against creatures caught between human and wolf, pack members in various stages of transformation. And there, in the center of it all, stood Rowan. He was magnificent and terrifying. More wolf than man now, his massive form holding back 3 hunters at once. Blood matted his dark fur, but his eyes, the same amber I recognized, burned with defiance. He saw me before I saw him, our eyes locked across the room. And in that moment, I felt a surge of something powerful and electric between us. Rage, fear, and beneath it all, a protectiveness that took my breath away. Then a hunter raised his gun toward Rowan's back, and without thinking, I screamed a warning and grabbed my pendant. Everything happened at once. The pendant blazed hot against my skin. Energy surged through me, raw and untamed, and every human in the room, every hunter, suddenly staggered, clutching their heads as though struck by sudden, overwhelming emotion. In that moment of confusion, the tide turned. The pack moved with coordinated precision, disarming hunters who could no longer focus through the emotional storm I'd somehow unleashed. I sank to my knees, drained by whatever I'd done, but somehow still conscious. Through blurring vision, I saw Rowan shift back to human form, moving toward me with an expression of wonder and concern. "Elise," he said, his voice hoarse as he reached me. "What have you done?" I tried to answer, but darkness was already closing in, my strength completely depleted. The last thing I felt were strong arms catching me as I fell forward, and a voice in my ear whispering, "Hold on, Omega. Just hold on." Then everything went black. I dreamed of running through moonlit forests, faster than I'd ever moved before, of howling alongside voices that answered mine with joy rather than sorrow, of belonging in a way I'd never experienced in the human world. When I finally woke, sunlight was streaming through unfamiliar windows. I lay in a comfortable bed in a room I didn't recognize, rustic wooden walls, simple furnishings, a large fireplace where embers still glowed. My body felt strangely heavy, as though I'd slept for days rather than hours. As awareness returned fully, memories flooded back. The hunters, the fight, the strange power I'd unleashed through my grandmother's pendant. I reached for it instinctively, finding it still around my neck, warm against my skin. 3 days, came a voice from the corner of the room. I turned my head to find Rowan seated in a chair by the fireplace, watching me. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a bandage visible beneath his partially unbuttoned shirt, but he was alive. Relief washed through me with surprising intensity. 3 days? I echoed, my voice raspy from disuse. That's how long you've been unconscious. He rose and approached the bed, offering a glass of water from the bedside table. After what you did, I accepted the water gratefully. taking small sips as I tried to organize my thoughts. The pups are safe, he assured me. Mira got them to the hunting cabin. They're thriving, even the runt. And the others? Nash? Theo? Something softened in Rowan's expression. Injured but alive, thanks to you. He sat on the edge of the bed, studying me with those intense amber eyes. What you did, it shouldn't have been possible, not for a human Omega who only just discovered her abilities. I struggled to sit up, and he moved to help me, his hand warm and steady on my back. I don't know how I did it, I admitted. It was instinct. The pendant grew hot, and I just pushed everything I was feeling outward. You overwhelmed them with emotion, Rowan explained. Fear, confusion, doubt, all the things you were feeling yourself. An Omega's mirror effect, but weaponized. There was something like awe in his voice. Even born Omegas rarely develop such abilities before years of training. The hunters? I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Gone, he said simply. Some fled when their minds cleared. Others, he hesitated. We didn't kill them, if that's what you're asking. We're not the monsters they believe us to be. But they won't return. I nodded, relieved. Despite everything the hunters had done, the thought of being responsible for deaths, even indirectly, was more than I could bear. How do you feel? Rowan asked, his gaze searching mine. Strange, I admitted. Like something inside me has shifted, awakened. I looked down at my hands, half expecting them to look different somehow. I don't feel entirely human anymore. Perhaps you never were, he suggested gently. Not entirely. A knock at the door interrupted us. Nash entered, carrying a tray of food. Her face was bruised, and she moved stiffly, but her eyes were clear and alert. When she saw me sitting up, a genuine smile transformed her face. Our Omega returns to us, she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. The formal title held none of the suspicion it had before. Only respect, and something close to affection. How are you? I asked, noting the bandage on her arm. Healing, she replied simply. As we all are. Her gaze shifted to Rowan. The council is waiting in the great room. They've come from the Western Territories to meet her. Rowan nodded, a flash of annoyance crossing his features. Tell them she needs more time to recover. I told them that. They insisted. Nash's expression conveyed her opinion of their insistence clearly. Council? I asked. Representatives from other packs, Rowan explained. News travels quickly in our world. A human Omega who saved pureblood pups and defeated hunters through emotional projection. It's unprecedented. A wave of anxiety washed through me. What do they want? To verify what happened, to see you for themselves. His jaw tightened slightly. To determine what this means for our kind's future. The weight of his words settled over me. I wasn't just an oddity or a temporary ally anymore. My existence had implications for their entire society. You don't have to see them today, Rowan added, his voice softening. Your recovery comes first. I considered this, then shook my head. No. I want to meet them. I pushed back the blankets, determined to face whatever came next. But I need to see the pups first. A look passed between Nash and Rowan. Something like approval. I'll bring them to you, Nash said, turning toward the door. Wait, Rowan called after her. Ask Mira to bring them, and tell the council they can wait another hour. After Nash left, silence fell between us. Rowan remained seated on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could feel the unnatural heat radiating from his body. There were things unsaid hovering in the air. Questions about what happened next, about my place in this world I'd stumbled into. You saved us, he said finally, his voice low. Not just the pups, but the entire pack. Why? You barely knew us. I treated you with suspicion, kept you prisoner. You could have died. I considered his question, searching for the truth beneath the obvious answers. Because it was right, I said at last. But also because I hesitated, uncertain how to articulate the connection I'd felt from the moment I walked through the gates, because something in me recognized something in all of you. like finding a piece of myself I never knew was missing. His eyes darkened slightly, the amber flecked with gold in the sunlight. And now? Now, I echoed. I don't know. I looked around the unfamiliar room, thinking of my solitary cabin miles away. The life I'd built there suddenly seemed hollow, incomplete. I can't go back to who I was before. I don't think I want to. Rowan's hand moved to cover mine, his touch sending that now familiar current of electricity up my arm. Then don't. The simple words contained an offer more complex than it appeared. Stay. Become part of us. Explore what you are, what we could be. Before I could respond, the door opened again, and Mira entered carrying the basket of pups. Their tiny bodies squirmed with newfound energy, their eyes now fully open and alert. When they caught my scent, they began making excited whimpering sounds that tugged at something primal inside me. They've been restless without you, Mira said, bringing them to the bed. They know they're Omega. I reached for the basket, and the pups immediately clambered toward me, small paws scrambling against the blankets. The runt, the one I'd saved, reached me first, her tiny cold nose pressing against my hand in what felt remarkably like recognition. She needs a name, Rowan said softly, watching the interaction with an expression I couldn't quite read. They all do. Isn't that your responsibility? I asked. As their alpha? He shook his head. They bonded with you first. In our traditions, that gives you the right. I looked down at the 3 pups now exploring the contours of the bed. The 2 larger ones, males, I now realized, were already showing the confidence of their bloodline, pouncing on each other playfully, but the runt, the female with white-tipped ears, stayed close to me, her tiny body pressed against my leg. Luna, I said, touching her soft head. For the smallest. I looked at the 2 males, watching their personalities reveal themselves in their play, Ash for the silver one, and Wilder for the one that can't sit still. Rowan smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually stern features. Good names, strong names. Mira, who had been watching from near the door, stepped forward. The council is growing impatient. Shall I tell them you're coming soon? Rowan nodded reluctantly. Give us a few more minutes. After she left, I gathered the pups close, drawing comfort from their innocent affection. What will the council want from me? Information, primarily, Rowan replied. Your existence changes things for our kind. A human Omega, or mostly human, opens possibilities we hadn't considered. He paused, weighing his next words carefully. Some may suggest you return with them to their territories, to study your abilities, to see if others like you exist. A chill ran through me at the thought of being separated from the pack I'd come to think of as mine, from Rowan, from the pups. And what do you want? His gaze met mine directly, all pretense stripped away. I want you to stay, here, with us. The admission seemed to cost him something, a vulnerability showing through his alpha strength. But the choice must be yours. That's our most sacred law, and Omega chooses their path freely. The pups curled against me, already trusting me completely. Beyond the window, I could see the courtyard where I'd first entered this world, now restored to order after the attack. Pack members moved about their daily tasks, their movements carrying the same fluid grace I'd noticed before. This place that had seemed so foreign just days ago now called to me with the promise of belonging. And if I choose to stay? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What would that mean? Rowan's expression intensified, something primal flickering beneath the surface. It would mean becoming truly part of the pack, learning our ways, developing your abilities. He hesitated before adding, and eventually, when you're ready, taking your place as Omega to my alpha. The implication hung in the air between us, not just a role, but a bond, a partnership of equals, balancing each other's natures. Is that what you want? I pressed, needing to hear it directly. His hand found mine again, fingers intertwining with surprising gentleness. From the moment you walked through our gates carrying our future in your arms, dusted with snow and unafraid despite everything. Yes, it's what I want. The admission resonated through me, truth recognizing truth. The connection between us had been instant, unexpected and undeniable. Alpha and Omega, two halves of a whole neither of us had realized was incomplete. I don't know your world, I said honestly. There's so much I don't understand yet. We'll learn together, he promised. There has never been anyone quite like you before. Luna, the runt, chose that moment to climb up my arm, her tiny paws digging into my sleeve for purchase. When she reached my shoulder, she nuzzled against my neck, a small warm presence that felt like both a blessing and a responsibility. I thought of my solitary life before. The quiet cabin, the days that blended into one another, the sense that I was waiting for something I couldn't name. And I thought of what awaited me here. Challenges and dangers, certainly, but also purpose, connection, family. I want to stay, I said finally, the words feeling right as they left my lips. I want to learn what I am, what I can become. I want to help protect the pack. My eyes met his. Your pack. Our pack. Relief and something deeper washed over Rowan's features. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent warmth spiraling through me. Then let's face the council together, he said. Show them what a human Omega truly is. I nodded, gathering strength from his certainty. As I carefully moved the pups aside to rise from the bed, Luna stubbornly clung to my shoulder, refusing to be dislodged. I think she's claimed you, Rowan observed, amusement warming his voice. Or I claimed her, I replied, gently stroking the pup's head. When I found them in the snow, we shared a look of understanding, both recognizing the moment our worlds had collided, when a human woman had walked out of a snowstorm, carrying the future of a pack that would become her own. Are you ready? Rowan asked as I stood on slightly unsteady legs, Luna still perched on my shoulder like a tiny sentinel. I touched my grandmother's pendant, feeling its familiar warmth. A legacy that had guided me here without my knowing. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be those who questioned my place, who feared what my existence meant. But looking at Rowan, at the pup who trusted me completely, I found certainty growing within me. I'm ready, I said, and followed my alpha to meet the council, not as an outsider, but as the Omega who had found her pack in the most unexpected of ways. As we walked through the house side by side, Luna's small head held high on my shoulder. I felt the stares of pack members we passed, no longer suspicious but respectful, curious, accepting. They nodded as we passed, some touching their foreheads in a gesture I didn't yet understand, but recognized as meaningful. Outside the doors to the great room, Rowan paused, turning to face me fully. Whatever happens in there, he said quietly, know this, you already belong here. With or without their approval. I smiled, drawing strength from his certainty and from the small life warming my shoulder. Then let's show them what happens when an alpha pack finds its Omega. The doors swung open before us, revealing a room full of strangers waiting to judge what they could not possibly understand. But as Rowan and I entered together, Alpha and Omega, strength and heart, power and compassion, I knew with absolute certainty that I had finally found my home. Not in the solitary cabin where I'd hidden from the world, but here, among those who recognized the parts of me I had never fully understood myself, among those who had lost their future until I walked through their gates, dusted with snow, carrying their pups in my arms.